Now the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We've got good, bad, and crazy news for you today as conservatives. And Jim, your prose on this story was excellent in our Good Martini today. Just as we turn to fall and the leaves start to leave the trees and hit the ground, we see political parties making decisions on where to spend their money over the final weeks of the campaign. And yesterday we got news that the no good, very bad week for Allison Grimes after she once again refused to admit that she voted for President Obama in 2008 and 2012 will no longer be getting financial assistance from the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee or a bunch of different third-party liberal organizations. So she's kind of on her own, although we shouldn't put this in the bag quite yet. The bad news, of course, is that they're shifting all those resources to Georgia because that one looks a little more up in the air, and Republicans need to hold that seat, too. But Allison Grimes is paying the price for a ridiculous position on a question, and that's good news.
And it's not that surprising. This is the time of year that party committees have to start prioritizing, start doing triage. And the National Republican Senatorial Committee, a couple of days ago, canceled their ad buys in Michigan. Bad news for Terry Lynn Land. Now, they spent $6 million more in North Carolina for Tom Tillis. So that's, this is what the committees do at this time of year. Now, some of us have been a little more skeptical of Grimes since the beginning. There was some fairly close polling in the spring and summer, particularly when McConnell was having that primary fight. But around early summer, McConnell took the lead, and it was never huge, never more than, I want to say, about 8 percentage points, but it was consistent. And I think it's been a long stretch since Grimes led a poll. At one point, she had released an internal that had her up. Yeah, sure, whatever. And, the DSCC's got to prioritize. Now, the other thing, which is kind of an interesting subtext here, or context, is that Grimes recently refused to say whether she voted for Barack Obama in 2008 or 2012. Now, who does the DSCC really answer to, Greg?
That would be the president.
If, President Obama or one of his advisors calls up the DSCC and says, look, cut her off, do they have to obey? No, but obviously, look, you want to be on good terms with the President of the United States and the leader of your party. The problem was, one, is that Grimes did that, one, in a meeting with an editorial board that was recorded and put up on YouTube. But then secondly, obviously McConnell went right after this in the debate, and then she had to say, the sanctity of the ballot box, and, it is a constitutional right for me to not tell anyone. Yes, you're free to do that, Ms. Grimes. If she didn't vote for Barack Obama, if she had voted for John McCain or Mitt Romney, she would have told us, now wouldn't she? Because that's a nice little way of saying, look at me, I'm not a lockstep Democrat. I don't go along with my party all the time, yada, yada, yada. Instead, she had to do this kind of, very Christine O'Donnell-esque, I'm not Barack Obama, I'm you type ad. Because, I guess the theory of this is that anytime you put up an ad saying you're not something, people begin to think you are. I am not a crook. I'm not a witch. I'm not Barack Obama. So, voters say, look, all right, so a vote for Grimes is a vote for Barack Obama. The media had bought into, the idea that, here comes this young, fresh face that's going to turn Kentucky Democrat and all that stuff. And then, no, it didn't happen. The next intriguing thing will be where else the DSCC feels the need. They did cancel some of their buys in Colorado, which was really frightening. I posted that a couple of days ago. Some people are thinking that they think that they're actually canceling, and the labor unions are going to jump in and try to save Mark Udall. So some of this may just be shuffling stuff around. But at this point, the DSCC is not on the air in Kentucky, and I think that's a very clear indicator of where they think this poll is going, where this race is going.
All right, on to the bad martini now, and there's a lot of them to choose from today. But this one's been making the rounds the past couple of days, and it's irked us over the past several years, to tell you the truth, because the president has this penchant of squeezing one or two official events into a massive fundraising swing that lasts 2 or 3 or more days. And Mark Knoller over at CBS has been dutifully trying to get an answer to just how much the taxpayers are on the hook for trips that are largely for political, party, and fundraising reasons. And he's not getting any answers. This is his report. From the way the White House vehemently refuses to disclose information on the costs of presidential political travel and calculations on reimbursing the government, you might think they were state secrets. As President Obama embarks Thursday on a 3-day Democratic fundraising trip to California, the White House again refuses an umpteenth request from CBS News for the political travel information. White House spokesman Eric Schultz said, as in other administrations, we follow all rules and regulations to ensure that the DNC or other relevant political committee pays what is required for the president to travel to political events. But repeated requests are turned down for a breakdown of the costs and an explanation and specific examples of how the White House calculates how much is paid by taxpayers and how much must be reimbursed to the government by the Democratic National Committee or others. Mueller then expresses his frustration by saying, "There's nothing in those reports that's going to help ISIS, so just tell us."
It's a fair point. On the one hand, we're not surprised. In a way, one of the big stories of the Obama presidency is the blurring of the partisan duties of the president and the campaigning duties with the official governance. And you can see this in everything from the IRS scandal to the notion that, the president his idea of reaching out to the American people to do these campaign-style rallies, his mentality that the answer to every problem is to give another speech and stuff like that. The only thing I can say to this that just going to add is that this is a golden opportunity for any Republican presidential candidate to come out and say, you know what? There's always been way too much cover-ups of this sort of thing. There's been way too much opacity and dishonesty about this. When I'm president, we're going to be clear about this. We're going to be very clear. And if we end up taking our lumps for it, we take our lumps for it. But the American people are entitled to this information. I think it's got to be an easy winning issue. I'm surprised if I were a candidate, I'd be making that a pledge, and I'd be challenging everybody else to sign that pledge.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would take that up as an issue, especially if we could get a good estimate on just how much the taxpayers are getting fleeced for doing partisan activities.
It's cheap. We know that.
Yeah, exactly right. So put a number out there. I think that could turn some heads. All right, on to the crazy martini now, Jim. And we are now less than 3 weeks away from Election Day, and the list of things that the president won't admit before Election Day keeps getting longer. We already knew he was postponing whatever executive action he has planned on immigration/amnesty till after midterm Election Day. Now, in the last few days, we've heard and been reminded, really, that we're not going to see just how much rates are going up with the latest Obamacare numbers coming out, because that's been conveniently pushed back to mid-November. And now the latest thing is, you know what, we're just not going to nominate a replacement for Attorney General until after the midterm elections as well, basically taking as much motivation off the table for red meat to go after the administration, which is already, of course, horrifically unpopular.
And this is, in keeping with the theme of that past martini, the bad martini, Greg. There's extraordinary cynicism in this. And one of the things, I have a piece on NRO's homepage today about the cynicism and depression of the American electorate right now. Look, I don't think you should be doing an amnesty by executive order to begin with. I think it's flatly, fundamentally unconstitutional. As Nick Gingrich should put it, flatly, fundamentally, profoundly unconstitutional, and maybe I need some other adverb in there, but you get the idea, But if we're going to do it before the election so that the American people can weigh in on it, right? Or the same thing for whoever your Attorney General nominee is. And the fact that he's so open about the fact that, well, we can't discuss this before the election because it might hurt us. So let's just, we'll do it afterwards or something like that. I think one of the great things that's been holding back Republicans in this cycle is this sense amongst conservatives and the sense amongst Republicans that it doesn't really matter. And you see when you have a president who has rewritten Obamacare, who has, and making all kinds of changes to that without rewriting the law, just implement it, bombed Libya without permission, bombed Syria without permission, basically decides the War Powers Act does not matter and he can bomb wherever the heck he wants, whenever he wants. Went around the recess appointment authority of Congress and got smacked down on that. The last thing was that he was saying he's going to close down Guantanamo Bay, even though every single defense appropriations bill says you cannot use any money in this bill to shut down Guantanamo Bay. They're just going to ignore Congress on this. And so, the constitutional law professor has done more to damage the concept of checks and balances as guaranteed in the Constitution than anybody else in modern history. And, this is one more sign. I think you kind of are doing a good job, Greg, of laying out the pattern here, that the election is really a formality, and it's just kind of a speed bump that slows down Obama doing what he wants, no matter what the views of the American people are.
On that cheery note, Jim, what do we got? 20 days to go, right?
That is correct, Greg.
All right. Well, rest up, everybody. It's going to be a fun home stretch. Jim, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And be sure to join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.